Hello everyone, back tuning into today's first video. We're going to have a look at the weather for the next week to 10 days for today's first video. I'll also bring you up to date with all the latest developments in the tropical Atlantic. Hurricane Florence caught us out yesterday because it went up to a Category 4 hurricane. Wasn't expected to reach major hurricane status until the weekend, actually. But it's back to a Category 3 now, but it's still a major hurricane status. It's forecast to go down to Category 2, but it may stay as a Category 3 and then strengthen into the weekend as well. So this is a major hurricane, a major storm, and I'll bring you up to date with all the latest developments with Florence in a moment. Could be some big impacts next week for the east coast of the United States. So we do have a few people watching from America, and if you happen to be watching this video, stay tuned. We'll bring you up to date with all the latest developments with Hurricane Florence very shortly. Also have a look at the weather for next week to 10 days as well. We've got the full stats of the summer of 2018 in from the UK Met Office, so I'll bring you up to date with that very briefly for this video. And then later on this afternoon, I think we'll release the verification for the summer forecast. We'll see how the summer forecast fared vis-a-vis the data from the UK Met Office for the summer of 2018, and then that will close it all on the summer and will be firmly off and running into the autumn. So that's coming up later on this afternoon, but this is your week to 10 day video update, and I'll get on with it for you right now. So we've got three areas of interest. Gordon is now well inland in the southern part of the United States over there. Tropical depression should be going down to post-tropical status very shortly, so we won't worry too much about that. Then we've got this red X. I've been watching this all week. It started off as a yellow X earlier in the week, when it became an orange X. It's now up to a red X, which means it is very close, this area of thunderstorms, to producing a tropical storm. So what the National Hurricane Center are saying about this is that there's a 70% chance now of cyclone formation within the next 48 hours. They say a broad area of low pressure is centered a few miles southwest of the Cabo Verde Islands. Shower and thunderstorm activity associated with this low has changed little in organization over the past few hours, and recent satellite data indicate that a well-defined center has not yet formed. That's why it is not yet a tropical storm. However, environmental conditions still appear to be conducive for development, and a tropical depression is expected to form within the next few days while the system moves toward the west or northwest across the tropical Atlantic Ocean. So within 48 hours, there's a 70% chance, a high chance, that this is going to form a tropical storm. Could happen at any point in the next few hours. Within the next 5 days, there is a 90% chance that this is going to form a tropical storm. So we've got to keep an eye on that. And then, of course, we've got Hurricane Florence just here in the central part of the tropical Atlantic. So let's see what they're saying about Florence. So at the moment, Hurricane Florence is a Category 3 hurricane. As I'm doing this video at 12:34 in the afternoon UK time, it's a Category 3 hurricane. I did the video yesterday when I think it was a Category 2, but within a couple of hours it had gone up to Category 4. So this is Florence is proving a very, very tricky hurricane to monitor. So at the moment it's Category 3, which means it's got maximum sustained winds of 115 miles an hour. There will be gusts probably going up to 130 miles an hour. Its central pressure is just 964 millibars, and it's moving northwest at around 12 miles an hour. Let's have a look at the forecast from the National Hurricane Center. Now remember, this is proving a bit tricky to forecast for. So at the moment, it's a major Category 3 hurricane just there. It is forecast to weaken slightly down to a Category 2 within the rest of today. So it should go down to Category 2, but it may stay as Category 3. It's just on that sort of knife-edge periphery between Category 1 and Category 2. So it's possible that later on, when this gets updated by the National Hurricane Centre, these H's in the round circles here, they will actually be M's, which is major hurricane status. The idea is that it is going to go down to a Category 2 over the next sort of couple of days, but then as we get through into weekend, the start of next week, we see the M's appearing, strengthening of Hurricane Florence taking place up to major Category 3 or above hurricane. I think they're forecasting to get to Category 4 by the early part of next week, and by then getting perilously close to Bermuda. That's Bermuda just there. Remember, this cone is kind of like an area, a probable path of the storm centre. It doesn't show the size of the storm, so hazardous conditions can occur outside of this cone. So although the cone itself is only reaching Bermuda just there, of course you could get disruption beyond that cone area, and it has been getting ever closer to Bermuda in any case over the past few days. I think the islands of Bermuda really do have to watch out for this storm. And then next week, Florence might get over towards some of these states here on the eastern seaboard of the United States. So this is how the GFS is forecasting America for next week. This is Tuesday next week. Reasonably quiet conditions through the start of next week. We've got this ridge here up towards the northeast of the states and up towards the east coast of Canada. But as we go through to Wednesday, we can just see Florence starting to appear on the far right-hand chart, right-hand side of the chart. As you're looking at it, that's Florence just beginning to appear on the edge of the chart on Wednesday. And then we go through to Thursday and getting perilously close then in a week's time to the east coast of the United States. We can't say what sort of category of hurricane this will be, but it looks like a major impact there just off the east coast of the States. And then actually, as we go through to the end of next week, the GFS model wants to move Florence right onto that eastern seaboard of America, possibly affecting states such as New York. So could be very impactful indeed. Centre stays just off the east coast of America, but you see these tight-packed ice bars, they would be bringing severe winds and also a lot of heavy rain to our east coast of America. And it's a long way off as well, this, so obviously it is subject to change in any case. That's Sunday, and by then it's moving up towards Newfoundland, still as a very major area of low pressure. That's how the GFS is picking things up. This is the ECM. This is for, again, Wednesday next week. There's Florence just there on the extreme right-hand corner of the chart. As you're looking at it, this, of course, is the east coast of the United States just here. And then we go through the course of the second half of next week. So it takes us to Thursday, and there's Florence moving on to the eastern seaboard of the United States, then bringing a major impact some of those central eastern seaboard states. Actually comes further inland compared to what the GFS is showing as we go through to Friday. That is a very major hit from Hurricane Florence. Again, we can't say what category of hurricane that be, how severe it would be, it's too far away, but a major direct hit on the east coast of America being forecast by the ECM through the second half of next week. And then Florence kind of curves back out in towards the Atlantic Ocean, begins to move away from America, might get caught up in the jet stream at that point as it recurves back out into the Atlantic, and maybe will bring some sort of impact for the UK and for Europe into the third week of September. Of course, it'd just be an area of low pressure and not a hurricane, but it might have an impact, some impacts on the UK and European weather scene in the third week of September. We'll have to wait and see on that. And then, of course, we can't see what's going on, but we know we've also got this other storm, or at the moment, just an area in front of us. It might develop into a tropical storm following on the heels of Florence. So we'll have to watch out what's happening there as well with this particular area of interest that is likely to become at least a tropical storm within the next day or so. So a lot going on in the tropical Atlantic at the moment. Things are definitely livening up after a very, very quiet start to the 2018 hurricane season. Right, I told you we've got, let's come back close to home, I told you we've got the stats in from the UK Met. So this is how summer 2018 turned out in terms of its mean temperature anomaly set against 61 to 1990. And you'll not be surprised though, it's been a really hot summer, indeed one of the hottest summers on record. Varies from area to area. Some places across England have actually had their hottest summer on record. Other places haven't had their hottest summer on record, but certainly many parts of the country have had a top 5 hot summer. So we find that all parts coming out with above average temperature anomalies, of course, but particularly focusing on England and Wales, where the temperature anomaly set against 61 to 1990 is over 2 degrees above average. So a very hot summer for England and Wales. And for Scotland and Northern Ireland, we're kind of like 1.5, 2 degrees above the 61 to 1990 average. The more modern average, 81 to 2010, which is a warmer temperature series. 61 to 1990 is the old and cold temperature average, but 81 to 2010, more modern average, and takes into account sort of modern warming. We find, again, very hot summer. Really for most parts of the country, well above average temperatures. England and Wales on this data set comes out around 1.5 degrees or more. Still, some areas up to 2 degrees above average. Scotland and Northern Ireland over 1 degree to 1.5 degrees above average. So wherever you are, you have had either a very warm or a hot or even a record-breakingly hot summer. Precipitation, rainfall looking like this in terms of 61 to 1990. Most places coming out with a dry or a very dry summer, particularly dry through this central swathe of England. So kind of like the Midlands down to central southern England, also up to Lincolnshire. Some of those areas are kind of like 30% or less of their average. Also, parts of eastern Scotland have had a very dry summer. And then sort of around the edges of that area, so we've got Wales, southwest England there, and then we've got kind of East Anglia, southeast England there. Again, it is drier than average, between 15 and 70% of average, but not quite as dry as it is through that central swathe of England, also across eastern Scotland. Actually, some very limited areas across southwestern parts of Scotland and also Northern Ireland coming out much closer to average there, and that would be primarily down to what happened in August, when it did turn more unsettled. The summer broke really in the northwest. It broke at the end of July, and for other parts of the country, it broke in the second week of August. Set against 81 to 2010, again, we see a very, very similar story. So it's been a hot and dry summer. It varies from area to area as to how hot and dry this summer has been. But we can say that wherever you are, it has been a really warm to hot summer. And we will be verifying the gazweathers.com 2018 summer forecast later on this afternoon. Right, let's have a look at the 500 millibar height anomaly flowcharts from Penn State University for the next week to 10 days. We've got the ECMWF here on the top, and the GFS, which I'll show you in a moment, is on the bottom. 500 millibars, area feet is an area in the absolute high pressure, low pressure. I've been moved around by the jet stream running above. Red extrapolates to high pressure, and blue to low pressure. So the ECM has this area below average heights, low pressure, out to the north and northwest of the country in a 7 to 10 day time frame, with a ridge through central parts of Europe. That's kind of like the ridge that we had through the summer that gave us the hot summer, now relocating more to our south and southeast across central Europe. And so we've got more influence from the jet stream. The black lines here And that green line is the jet stream coming across the Atlantic into Europe as well in the 7 to 10 day time frame. So certainly more unsettled, not desperately wet, but more unsettled as we're going into this middle phase of September. We talked about this in yesterday's main video update. It could well be that it's getting into the middle part of September. And then the second half of the month, we will find the weather becoming gradually more and more unsettled. The GFS is very similar, but if anything, it's even more unsettled than the ECM, with this area below average heights to the north of the UK. The above average heights are there to the south, but they're weakening. The jet stream is returning to the UK. So again, that looks rather unsettled, to say the least, through the 7 to 10 day time frame, and we could well be looking into the second half of September to signs of an increasingly unsettled outlook. These are the GFS temperature and precipitation ensembles for the next couple of weeks. The red line here is the 30-year upper air temperature average. We're looking at Leicester today. So we can see that temperature anomalies, or the ensembles, are cooling off in the next 24 hours. It's going to turn a bit cooler. But then as we get through to the early part of next week, just briefly, we warm things up before we cool things down again. So a bit up and down with the temperature in the next week. What we can say, though, is we're going to the middle part of September and then the second half of the month, we have got a lot of scatter showing up here. So it is a little bit difficult to decipher what is going to happen from a temperature perspective. From the warmest ensemble members up there to the coolest ensemble members down there, we've got something like a 15 to 20 degree temperature differential. So a lot of scatter showing up. Does look rather changeable though, and I suspect what's going on there is that we bring warmer sectors and cooler sectors through across the country, and so they're differing from ensemble member to ensemble member in when those different warmer and cooler sectors are moving through, the timings of those creating a lot of that scatter. Precipitation-wise, we can see that there's a gradual sort of increasing trend to unsettled weather showing up here. So it does look as though as we get into the second half of September in particular, we have got some rainfall to the Midlands before that. Got some rainfall coming up over the next few days. But particularly as we go through into the second half of the month, that's 15th of September just there. As we get through into the second half of September, we definitely have signs of increasing rainfall. So it looks like very, very gradually things are turning more and more unsettled, which is what we expected for this September. We expected to start off with a lot of dry weather, quite warm weather, and we thought that as the month went along, it would slowly but surely, break down that ridge, return the jet stream, and just gradually turn things more and more unsettled the further on into September we get. And that is very much showing up, I think, now within the GFS ensembles. Temperature anomalies from the 6th through to the 14th of September coming out close to average. Again, for the north, it looks like we're coming out a bit cooler than average for England and Wales. If anything, we may be a little bit on the warmer than average side. It's not a big deviation, near normal temperatures in the week ahead. Precipitation anomalies still looking drier than average for many southern parts of England and Wales in those red colours. Further north and west, it does look as though things go a little bit more unsettled. Although, again, not a particularly wet week coming up in terms of the precipitation anomaly in the week ahead. But of course, that only gets us to the 14th of September. And within the GFS ensembles, it looks like the real change to unsettled conditions is actually happening just a little bit after the 15th. So that's how the GFS is looking for Sunday, and it looks rather unsettled even on Sunday, although for the south we are still close to a ridge, so a reasonable amount of dry weather. Early next week we're setting up a north-south split. We talked about this in the video yesterday, so summer is holding on to our south with that area of high pressure, but autumn is knocking on the door in the north with the low pressure and with the jet stream too. In between, there's quite a big temperature contrast, and there's also quite an active weather front that's in that sort of position. So to the south of that, it's warm. To the north of it, it's cool. And along the weather front, there will be quite a bit of wet weather. So the early part of next week, have a north-south split, and also quite a bit of rain. Now, we get through to middle of next week, and we find this cooler air moving southwards along with that weather front as well. Then it all goes rather slack through to the end of next week, generally within cooler air though. That takes us to next weekend. This is weekend of the 15th, 16th of September. And low pressure is gradually beginning to become more influential through this weekend. So it looks like as we get up towards day 10, that is day 10, Sunday the 16th of September, it looks like it's increasingly unsettled really. There's Florence, by the way, on the extreme left-hand chart, left-hand side of the chart, as you are looking at it. Into the extended range, it looks unsettled. Low pressure, never too far away. Relatively warm. The air is coming in from a southerly to southeast direction with this particular GFS run, 6 o'clock run of a GFS. But we've got all of this low pressure out in the Atlantic. Some of it does contain the remains of Florence, by the way. And it just looks increasingly unsettled, I think, as we're going into the second half of September, but not cold on that particular GFS run. ECM is looking like this. So again, we've got this north-south split setting up through the early part of next week. This is Wednesday next week. There's an active weather front that's in that kind of position. That's a little bit wrong. So the weather front is in that kind of position through the middle of next week. To the south of it, it is relatively warm and dry. To the north of it, it's cool and showery. Now that front drops southwards. By the time you get through to Thursday next week, we are introducing the cooler air from off the Atlantic, and we get up to day 10 with the ECM. That's how we're looking. Not quite as unsettled as the GFS. We saw it on the height anomaly flow chart, but we have broken through the Atlantic. We could roll on another day or so. I suspect it would turn increasingly unsettled again. And then finally, we've got the GEM looking like this. So again, the north-south split through the early part of next week, quite warm and dry in the south, cooler and showery up in the north. It turns cooler through the course of next week. We bring that air down from the north, but probably keep a lot of dry weather for the south. And then we get up towards day 10, and it looks increasingly unsettled, to say the least, with low pressure breaking through the high pressure. By the time you get to day 10, Sunday 16th of September, we are under low pressure conditions, which will bring some probably quite heavy rain even to the far south of the country. So things are livening up. Things are livening up in the tropics. Things are livening up in the UK. It looks like the trend is there to turn things increasingly unsettled for the UK as we go through into the middle and particularly the second half of September. Having said all that, next week probably still brings a fair amount of dry, and at least for the early part of the week, probably quite warm conditions to the south, always cooler and more unsettled up in the north. And then by the time you get through to the middle and second half of the month, the idea is very much to break those unsettled conditions through. Whether it turns cooler, particularly in the south, I'm not sure. We may hang on to quite warm air in the south, even into the second half of the month, but with a much more unsettled flavour. So livening up with the weather for the UK, and certainly livening up in the tropical Atlantic. We're linking to the National Hurricane Centre from the links page at Gazovin, so you want to keep an eye on what's happening with the forecast for Hurricane Florence, then do keep an eye on the National Hurricane Centre. And it looks like it'll be a pretty impactful storm, this, for eastern parts of America as we get through to next week. So I suspect we'll be hearing quite a lot about Florence in the coming days. Right, that's all for now. We'll be back later on with our verification for the summer 2018 forecast, so come back for that later on this afternoon. But that's all for now, and thanks for watching.